Hello. Today we're going to look at how to get free plants from layering. So what is layering? Well, it's a simple technique to propagate plants. What we can do is we can take a branch of a living plant and, without removing it from the plant while it's still attached, actually encourage it to produce roots. And then once it's produced roots, we can then remove it from the parent plant and plant it elsewhere. This will give us a copy of the parent plant. Sounds a little complicated, doesn't it? Let's do a little demonstration and see really how simple it is. Here I have a sage plant which I want to reproduce, and I actually want to reproduce it right next to where it is. Here I have a low-lying, rather flexible branch which is just above the soil here, and here the soil below it is probably only 3 inches, or I don't know, about 8 centimeters from the branch itself. So what I could do simply to layer it is to take this stone and put it like that. The branch is now touching the soil and it will actually produce roots. Now some people will rough up the surface, slightly wound the plant to encourage roots, but I'm not even going to do that. So that is very simple layering. So let's quickly take a look at the diagram to explain that, do a quick recap. Here we have a picture of a plant with a branch held against the soil with a rock. Now the contact with the soil will encourage the plant to set down roots. And once these roots have been set down, we can simply cut the branch and we will have a new plant. We're now going to look at air layering. Now, as the name suggests, the layering is done in the air. So when you don't have a branch which is near the soil, what you can do is still do layering, but actually do it on a fairly sizable stem or branch that's in the air like this. So here I have a rose and I want to air layer it here at this level here because we have quite a good, strong, sturdy branch. So let's take a closer look. So here we are next to the rose and I'm going to do my layering here. Now to do this I'm going to use this plastic bottle. I've cut off the bottom and the top and put a slit down the side, and I filled it with a little bit of rather inert soil, really. It's a kind of potting soil which is not particularly rich. We don't really need something very fertile. What we're going to do is we're going to wrap it around this part of the rose. Now what we can do is this. Before putting our little bottle with the soil in it around here, what we can do is first of all remove a few thorns. It'll be a little bit easier to deal with. And I managed to stick one in my thumb. That's why we want to remove the thorns. Also this little leaf here. So we can do this, but also what we can do is remove a little bit of the surface here with this sharp knife. Okay, now some people ring the whole of the branch. Some people don't do this at all, and some people do a little bit like this. This kind of slight wounding of the branch will encourage it to produce roots at this position. But again, we don't necessarily have to do this. So now let's get on with putting our little container of soil on this spot. So here I have my little container. What I've also got is a bit of black plastic bag to help to secure it, to stop the soil disappearing, and also to ensure that this stays in the dark, because roots like to grow in the dark. So let's try this now. So because I've got a split in the bottle, this should just go round quite nicely, like so. And then we can use this black plastic, one, to stop the soil from disappearing, and two, to just keep the sunlight off our little layering position here. I'm now going to tie with actually the plastic strings that came with the back plastic bag, just to secure everything in place. As you can imagine, this is a whole lot easier with a horizontal branch, and picking a vertical branch like this, it's not quite so easy, because certainly any soil you use will want to fall out of the bottom here. Some of the purists use things like moss in here instead of soil, and some people use sand or various other concoctions. As I said, the fertility is not important. What is important is the fact that it's kept there. And of course, this soil, one thing I mentioned which is extremely important, needs to be very moist too, to encourage the roots to grow into it. So there we are. That's our air layering. So let's look at the little diagram just to recap. Here we have a plant that we're going to do air layering. So we're going to surround an aerial branch with our container containing soil, moss, sand, or whatever. Now, I used a plastic bottle in the example, but we could use just cling film from the kitchen or some other container like a plastic pot, but it has to be something which will retain the moisture within the soil and also keep the light out. This is why I used, in my example, some black plastic to keep the soil in place, but also to keep the light out too. Once the roots have developed, and here we can imagine we've got X-ray eyes and we can see below the black packaging, we can then cut the plant and plant it wherever we want. So that's it for layering. We've covered the two main types of layering. There are others such as mound layering and tip layering and various other variants, but it's over to you to experiment. Note, there is always lots of different ways of doing the same thing. We're not restricted to the types of materials we use or what tools we use. It really is a question of practice and personal preference. One thing to note though is that human beings didn't invent layering. It was actually invented by nature. If you think of something such as a strawberry, it will send out branches, what we call runners, which will travel over the soil and in certain places will produce roots and new plants. Again, clones of the parent plant. So we can thank nature for giving us free plants by layering.